is Susan Gibbs, and I am the president of the SS United States Conservancy. And my grandparents, William Francis Gibbs, the ship's designer, and Vera Cravath Gibbs, his wife, both were on the maiden voyage of the SS United States 70 years ago.
New York City to Le Havre, France, and Southampton, England. For those who sailed on her, it will be a day long remembered.
So my grandparents were in first class, and my grandfather spent most of his time on the maiden voyage in the engine room or up on the bridge, whereas my grandmother enjoyed lots of food and beverages and just the excitement of being on board. It was the culmination of my grandfather's almost 40-year quest, and so there was just such a celebratory vibe on the ship. And yeah, my grandmother, it was the first of many voyages she took aboard the SS United States, and she wrote that coming aboard the SS United States was like coming home. So she loved the ship. My grandmother kept a diary from her trip on the maiden voyage of the SS United States, which I will read a few excerpts from. So I'll start with the beginning, the first page. At 6 o'clock in the morning of the departure, I was sitting in bed reading of Les Amours de Henri IV. Breakfast was brought in and was appetizing as usual, but I had a hard time eating it. At this point, I shall describe the costumes of the ladies. I wore a mauvish, gray and black fine print with a bit of black lace twined around my throat. I had red shoes, a red bag, and red gloves. At my belt was pinned a bunch of violets, a lovely bouquet if I do say so. I picked them up at Bergdorf Goodman for a large price. I wore a small, shiny, black straw hat. So next she writes of the ship readying for departure after the guests at her Bon Voyage party had all begun dispersing. And she refers to William Francis Gibbs throughout her diary by his nickname, which was WF, his initials. So she writes, the 0 hour was approaching. Kay and I went up to the promenade deck and found an open window. There we stayed, waiting impatiently for the first gangplank to be lifted. By this time, the ship's band was playing lustily. Some couples were dancing on the deck. I'm glad I missed WF saying goodbye to his brother. I fancy I would have sobbed at that point. Like all ship sailings, the last 10 minutes seem endless. Finally, one by one, the gangplanks were pulled in. By now, the good ship started talking. By that, I mean she had given out several deep-throated roars. My, what a voice. We continued to wait breathlessly. At last she moved, but oh, so slowly. In a few moments, Kay and I rushed up to the sun deck where we stayed while our good ship went down the river. Airplanes and helicopters were all over. Fireboats were emitting great fountains of water. Excursion boats were in the river, loaded with people. Every time we passed a small boat, it would give one toot. Etiquette required 3 great answering roars from us. The din was continuous. I do not remember much about lunch, except that I had a shirred egg, which was of exactly the right consistency, prefaced by a much needed dry martini. Now I'll just jump to the to the conclusion of the voyage, the day the record was broken. The next morning, Monday, I arose at 5:30. WF was up and dressed. We sipped a little coffee and munched toast in the stateroom. In a twinkling of an eye, I was completely dressed, so we emerged from the cabin together. He went to the bridge. I went to the sun deck, where I hoped to see Bishop's Light. As I opened the door to the boat deck, I nearly had my head blown off. There was such a gale. There was wind, rain, and fog. I found a good place behind an iron screen, which is placed across the end of the deck, and there I stayed. As soon as I got located, I realized more and more people were congregating, many still in evening clothes, having danced the whole night through. Various inebriates struggled past. Several of those rushed up a ladder, or rather a stairway, which was marked "No Admittance." Although I glared and even protested a bit, they kept going up. Everyone was trying to discover Bishop's Light. I doubt if anyone did. Of course, the gale, the fog, the rain, and the dawn, just breaking, made the official end of the run a fearfully dramatic moment. By 6:15, I went down to the promenade and joined in the jollification. The Meyer Davis Orchestra had come up on deck, having played the whole night through. There was dancing and singing, and finally a snake dance up and down the deck. Everyone danced with everyone else. One man was offering any woman he saw a swig from his bottle. And finally, I'll read the last paragraph of her diary entry from the eastbound maiden voyage crossing. The trip of trips was now coming to a close. When I look back on the weeks, months, and years that WF spent on the SS United States, I wonder how his enthusiasm remained undiminished. The series of disappointments that he had to face, the political battles that he had to face, all those went on for so long. Those aggravations kept repeating themselves with slight variations over and over again. What I always wondered was why the wellspring of WF's enthusiasm didn't dry up. I am reminded of what Edmund Burke wrote. The nerve that never relaxes, the eye that never blanches, the thought that never wanders, these are the masters of victory.